Welcome to Master Plane, where the synergy between players and the characters they embody takes center stage. In this immersive journey, role-playing serves as the lifeblood of our unfolding campaign, igniting the creative flames that shape our Discord servers. As the director, showrunner, and game master, I'll craft a world teeming with events, obstacles, and scenarios intricately tied to character dynamics formed through your roleplay. While I may not be able to personally acknowledge every line of roleplay within our server, rest assured that I'm committed to spotting the sparks of entertainment and ingenuity that can propel our campaign in diverse and exciting directions. So embark on this collaborative adventure with us, and together, let's chart the course of the Master Plane narrative.
Oyji, feeling the weight of his unpreparedness, stood amidst the aftermath of the battle. He silently cursed himself for not being more ready. His eyes moved to the old man who had summoned the light, offering a nod filled with gratitude and respect. In his heart, Oyji knew that without the old man's magic, the impact of their fight would have been far less. His gaze then dropped to the glyphs on his hands. He clenched his fists, frustration coursing through him. These symbols were a constant reminder of the power he sought to control, the dark arts he needed to master. After a moment, Oyji turned toward Sister Kulia, dressed in her nun's attire. He bowed to her, a gesture of respect for her presence and assistance in the battle. Facing the rest of the group, he expressed his appreciation.
There is someone I need to find, however. I'm sure we all know we must deal with the craziness at hand, but I must find a comrade.
His eyes then settled on Samuel Andrews and Ahlai. Assessing them briefly, he voiced his support for Ahlai's decision.
I for one say let her end the bastard. We're all men and women of the blade. We know each rogue is given to their own creed. His brought him death.
With these words, he spat at the feet of the artist, a gesture of disdain for the fallen enemy. Resolved, Oyji then turned away, his thoughts focused on finding Ev Stormsore, the comrade he urgently needed to locate. As Oyji walked away from the group, Ahlai turned to Samuel. With a sense of vindication in her voice, she said,
"See, I am not alone. I am sure many here want the same thing."
Her words carried the weight of shared sentiment among those who had survived the battle. Meanwhile, Oyji continued through the aftermath, his internal struggle growing with each fallen body he passed. Among the wounded and grieving, his gaze landed on a young boy, barely 8, trying to console his even younger brother. The sight of the children, lost in their despair and crying for their parents, struck a deep chord in Oyji. Despite his intent to search for Ev, Oyji found himself unable to ignore the boy's plight. He turned abruptly and sat down in front of them, his face contorted into a grimace.
Hey, stop the crying!
He commanded sharply, his tone more of a desperate attempt to jolt the child into composure than an expression of anger. The younger boy was shocked into silence, while the older one instinctively stepped forward, shielding his brother. Oyji, recognizing the protective gesture, addressed them in a flat, yet not unkind tone.
You're doing a good job looking after your brother, but it might help if you both got somewhere a bit more comfortable. You want to do the right thing, you follow me. If you think you can keep your brother from crying all night by yourself, you stay.
Standing up, Oyji began walking toward the center of the settlement. He glanced back only once, to ensure that the two boys were following, maintaining a slow pace so they could keep up. In the shadow of the ruined settlement, a makeshift infirmary sprawls under the open sky. At its heart, a young woman works tirelessly. Her blonde hair falls in gentle waves, framing a face marked by determination and kindness. She moves among the wounded with practiced ease, her hands offering comfort and her voice a soothing presence in the chaos. The area around her buzzes with activity. People from all walks of life, injured and dazed, gather in this sanctuary she has created. She treats each one with equal care, her demeanor unchanged, whether she's wrapping laborer's hands or setting a nobleman's broken limb. However, the situation grows increasingly bleak. The supplies, once plentiful, are now reduced to a few scattered herbs and a handful of bandages. Each motion she makes is measured, trying to make the most of what little is left. The air is thick with uncertainty, and the grim reality sets in. Her resources are not infinite. Despite this, her resolve doesn't waver. Will, a steadfast figure among the chaos, found solace in contributing to the recovery efforts. His willingness to lend a hand in various tasks was evident, yet he understood where his skills would be most effective. The fire, with its crackling and warm embrace, beckoned him. It was here, in the dance of flames and embers, that he felt most at home, most useful. The tall, muscular man's efforts to usher the civilians from the safety of the tunnel marked the end of their harrowing ordeal. The muted reactions of the crowd, neither triumph nor despair, echoed the uncertainty of the moment. Safety, however, was more tangible outside, where a makeshift infirmary had been set up near the tavern. His voice, firm yet considerate, guided the crowd.
Those who need aid make your way to the tent, and those that don't aid in the search for others.
Will, moving with a purpose different from those seeking healing, approached the bustling tent where he found a stranger in charge, immersed in the demanding task of caring for the injured with compassion and respect. The air, tainted with the smell of blood and dirt, was slightly softened by the scent of medicinal herbs she used. Eden, despite her fatigue, evident as she wiped sweat from her brow, remained dedicated. Her mind was heavy with the distressing scenes she had witnessed, but she pressed on. The wounded, appreciative of her help, seemed to overlook her newcomer status. Eden, working quietly, hoped her efforts would help her find acceptance and a sense of belonging in this new, unfamiliar place. Will waited for the right moment to address her, his voice carrying both an offer of help and a hint of experience.
You can stretch your herbs in a stew.
His suggestion, born from years of improvisation, offered a practical solution in these dire times.
I'd be glad to help if you need it. We just need a large pot, some tubers, and really any meat, plus your herbs and some time.
His plan was simple, yet effective. A way to extend the limited resources while providing comfort and warmth to those in need. Her attention was momentarily diverted by this confident advice on herbal applications that was unexpected but deeply appreciated. It was a welcome interaction for Eden, who, though skilled in her craft, understood the value of shared knowledge.
Thank you, I'll certainly give your methods a try.
Eden said, her voice tinged with gratitude. Her smile, though weary, was genuine, reflecting her appreciation for his help.
Having an extra set of hands is always a blessing. I must admit, I was not fully prepared for a calamity of such scale. Under normal circumstances, my trusty backpack contains all my essentials. but I'm nearly out of the supplies I brought. Do you happen to know any local source for herbs? Perhaps an apothecary? I arrived just before the chaos unfolded, so my knowledge of this area is quite limited.
Her voice waned into a quiet hopefulness, betraying her uncertainty about securing the necessary resources amidst the upheaval. Will's keen observation caught the signs of Eden's fatigue, a concern that he felt more equipped to address than any culinary task. His smile, tinged with sadness, reflected his understanding of the hardship surrounding them.
If memory serves, there was an apothecary back towards the market square, but that was years ago. Honestly, I'm not local either, just a wanderer passing through.
He explained, revealing a glimpse of his own life as a perpetual traveler. Will's journey was one of constant movement, a nomadic existence that took him from one settlement to another, always gathering supplies, but never lingering long enough to form lasting ties. He was a man untouched by time, a wanderer who had crossed paths with generations of the same families. Such a life, he knew, was best lived in the solitude of the road, away from the questions and suspicions that his ageless existence might provoke.
The tavern should have what I need. If you want me to get the stew started, then I can watch the wounded while you gather the herbs.
He offered, though he was aware that finding herbs in the aftermath of chaos might be challenging. Most of his own supplies came from his travels, foraged from the wilderness where unique and rare ingredients grew, untouched by civilization. His life on the road, while solitary, afforded him the luxury of discovering and collecting these natural treasures.
I might just consider establishing a new apothecary shop here, should this little town find its way back to its feet.
Eden mused, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and irony. As she prepared to offer a curtsy to the man, she paused, noticing the unsightly bloodstains marring her dress. With a whispered arcane incantation and a fluid motion as though brushing away invisible dust, her dress miraculously regained its pristine, shimmering appearance. She then respectfully lowered her head in acknowledgement to the man.
I am Eden, a humble healer at your service.
She announced with a poised, yet weary grace. She felt relieved that her recent transformation, back from a formidable manifestation to her human form, had gone unnoticed. That spell had drained her considerably, leaving her in a fragile state, and she silently hoped she wouldn't succumb to exhaustion. She trusted the skirt of her dress to subtly conceal the slight but persistent trembling of her legs, a sign of her fatigue. Turning her gaze toward the tavern, she contemplated the man's suggestion. The building stood a short distance away, visibly scarred and battered from the recent turmoil.
The tavern, indeed.
She remarked thoughtfully.
It might be worth a try, though it seems to have borne the brunt of the conflict.
She then looked back at the man, her eyes conveying a silent plea.
Would you be able to stay and tend to the wounded here? Your assistance would be invaluable, especially since I'm not at my strongest right now.
Willem fell into a contemplative silence for a prolonged moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a hint of amusement.
I can't decide if you'd be brave or foolish to settle in a place like this after what just happened. The dead whisper, and they say this is only the beginning.
He didn't know the specifics, but the audacious attack by the artist, a rogue of notorious renown, left no doubt that this marked the start of something ominous. He observed Eden's magic with a mixture of awe and skepticism, noting how it effortlessly erased any trace of her involvement in the conflict or contact with the wounded. Her introduction, coupled with her meticulous appearance, left him intrigued, yet uncertain.
Willem, vagabond and cook on occasion,
He replied, choosing to speak the language of shared experiences, rather than conventional formalities. He extended a piece of jerky to Eden.
It's not much, but it should take the edge off. We could be out here all evening.
His rugged hand held the sustenance that would offer her a fleeting respite from her fatigue. Eden's concern for the condition of the tavern elicited a hearty laugh from Willem.
A dented pot still holds water, and no one will notice mangled meat or smashed potatoes when their bellies are full and their wounds aren't aching because of the stew.
The wanderer was well acquainted with making the most of limited resources. In a settlement, he could craft a nourishing meal from whatever ingredients were at hand.
It would be my pleasure to help. Just let me know what needs doing.
Straddling the line between bravery and foolishness, I fear I'm inclined to think I lean more towards the latter. Or, to put it another way, I prefer to think of myself as being pragmatic. From what I've seen, leaving this place won't be easy. Thus, it seems wiser to endeavor to improve this place for the benefit of all who remain.
Her smile was warm and genuine as she responded to the man's introduction.
I get where you're coming from. I've also spent a significant chunk of my life traversing different paths. It's a pleasure to meet you, Willem.
Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she observed the large man rummaging for something, and a slight rumble in her stomach betrayed her hunger when he produced some dried meat.
Thank you for this. It's much appreciated. It'll certainly help me gather some much-needed energy. But I think it's best to save a portion, just in case there's someone else here who might be in greater need.
Without hesitation, she took a hearty bite of the meat, savoring the flavor while chewing thoughtfully, her attention still partially on Willem's words.
Certainly they must have some food stored around the tavern, but as for medicinal herbs and bandages, that's a bit uncertain. Nevertheless, I'll venture a look.
She continued, having consumed half of her portion of dried meat and cautiously setting the remainder aside.
If it's not too much trouble, could you perhaps fetch a barrel of water? It would greatly ease the task of hydrating the injured. Also, should you need to leave while I'm away, it would be a great help if you could find someone else to keep an eye on the wounded. But I intend to make this trip a quick one.
A barrel of water was a thoughtful request, one that Willem was more than willing to fulfill.
I'll see if there are any that haven't been smashed.
He confirmed, setting off toward the tavern. He didn't keep Eden waiting long, returning within a few minutes with a sack of supplies, a large pot, and an empty barrel slung over his shoulder.
Well, not quite a barrel of water, but I'll see if there are any able bodies who can fetch some water while you're looking for supplies.
Willem announced, placing the items down with a gentle huff. He smiled warmly at Eden.
Shouldn't be much trouble here while you're gone. I'll do my best to help whoever I can.
A former garrison commander with decades of experience under his belt, Nassim, sat up from his cot, disregarding his own wounds for the moment. He displayed a courageous spirit, offering to take on the responsibility of vigilance over the area in her absence. Eden places his bandage back in place and gestures for the injured ex-commander to take it easy. With smiles,
We'll make do, stretch what we've got, get more where we can.
Willem reassured the woman. His words carried the weight of experience in navigating times of scarcity, be it harsh winters or periods of conflict. Scanning the small amount of remaining able bodies and Nassim, he pondered the potential aid hidden amidst the crowd. It was indeed a lamentable truth that warriors seemed far more common than healers. The field commander, his eyes, sharp and discerning, watched Eden's valiant endeavors unfold. A level of respect was born, and gratitude for the exceptional hospitality he had witnessed from the stranger he'd never seen in the area. The commander's presence, stoic and unyielding, upheld his promise, silently preparing a mental report of his findings.